Today we'll be talking about software architecture and software architectural styles. We're going to use one system as a context for our discussion, one system that everybody should be reasonably familiar with. I'm talking about a web browser. It doesn't really matter which browser you want to think about, whether it's Google Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Internet Explorer, if anybody wants to think about that. So it really does not matter which browser you have in mind, whatever you happen to like. Also, try not to think about any extensions, any add-ons, other components that you may have installed into the browser. Just the bare bones browsers. Regardless of which browser you think about, they all have the same features. You can do pretty much exactly the same things with any browser. I would like you to think about architectural components, logical elements, perhaps processes that would enable the typical features of a browser. So again, we're not talking about the features. We're not talking about the things that you can do with a browser. What we're talking about, we are talking about what's under the hood of the browser. Things that you know are going to have to be in place in any browser, which would enable the typical features. Again, no features, but what's under the hood. I want everybody to think about one such element, an architectural component, perhaps a process, or something else that you know that must be within any browser. I want you to take 2 minutes to build a model representing that, and then we're going to discuss what these models are. And also everybody will need to think about a concise name, 1, 2, or perhaps 3 words that you would like to use to describe that element that you will be building. You have 2 minutes. Okay, now that everybody's done building their models, let's take turns explaining what your models are. I want you to be concise, perhaps 20 to 30 seconds, but I want you to explain to everyone what this is, why you build what you build, and what is the reason. What is the value that your component brings into the overall architecture of the browser? In other words, why do we have to have this particular component? Does it make sense? All right, how about we start over there?
The browser history and the cache.
Right. Thank you.
My model here is very simple. It's actually kind of part of this model. It is the back button, which you would have in a browser. So as you would go through, you would first get to your home page and slowly add pages as you browse the internet with your browser. And if you ever wanted to go back, say 2 sites at a time, you can even click the little arrow and go back 2 sites, but then you would lose these 2. And you can always go forward to them, but then once you go to a new place from there, and say take another color block, you would then lose those.
Very nice, very nice. So a concise description for this will be?
Back and forth buttons.
All right.
My model is going to be representing the favorites button, and basically I represented using this little flower as the button itself, and then the link to the favorites folder. And all these different colors are just, say, different favorites that someone has liked over time.
Okay.
And I'll just call this the favorites buttons.
Mm-hmm. Just a clarification. Is it just a button, or is it also the collection of favorites?
Collection of favorites.
And the button.
And the button. So
Or just maybe favorites.
okay, favorites.
Kind of encompassing everything.
All right, so my model is basically just describing the security process that a browser may have. So I know that certain browsers have this by, if you visit a certain website and it's trying to run a malicious script, then the browser would stop and prevent that from happening. So in this, I have the skeleton showing as the script, or the malicious script that's trying to be run on the web page. And the king right here is to prevent it from happening. And just to represent, I guess, like if a website is good or bad, I just put red on this side and then green on this side, and this would be just the user.
So, but the red passed the king.
Yeah, it did pass the king. Didn't it?
Ah. So he's not a perfect king then.
I guess not. So security process?
Let's try to take stock of what we have here. We have a security process, main window, bookmarks and homepage, favorites, back and forward button, browser history and cache, and an address bar. What do you guys think? Do you think these are important components?
Yes.
The next question, I don't want you to answer it, but think about it. Do you think if there are any other important components that we have not named so far? Again, don't answer this. Because what I would like you to do, I would like you to take another 2 minutes and think of yet another important component that you think should be in any browser, which is not yet here on the table. We'll do the same thing. You will build a model and explain it, and then we will give all of these models short names and see where it takes us. Make sense? Okay, you have 2 minutes. Everybody has their models. Let's talk about them. So what's that thing over there?
All right, so I decided to, what was it? My model basically shows multiple tabs, so opening new tabs and opening new windows. So right here, what we have is a browser already. This button right here, I decided that this button was just gonna open a new tab, and all these little pieces that are, what was it, like 2 pieces together, are different multiple tabs that we have open. As you can see, this guy is really, I guess, has a lot of tabs open, and this is just the main window. And if you wanted to start another window, you could, and this would just signify the other window. And here it has 2 tabs open. So yeah, it's basically the tab function.
I have designed a list of preferences that you can access and change within your browser. So for example, you could change the zoom on your browser. You could set the cache size. You can enable or disable cookies, perhaps even enable a built-in antivirus. And so yeah, these are just the preferences that are included with generally any browser.
Okay. So you're gonna call it
Preferences?
preferences.
Yeah.
My model represents the print feature that goes on a web browser, and I just modeled my Legos after just kind of resembling a printer.
I think it does look like a printer. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a good printer.
All right, my model here represents the function of any web browser that saves your passwords. So underneath him are all of his passwords that he remembers because they're there for him. He doesn't have to actually change it and go through the process of validating that it's him every single time. If he has a password, he's able to open up and get to the crown jewels of his profile for that specific website.
So a concise name for this one is
Password vault.
password vault. Okay.
This model represents the antivirus. So these snakes and spider represent the virus that trying to enter to my browser. But here I have my antivirus that will stop them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're gonna call it
Antivirus.
antivirus. Very well. So again, let's go around and review everything that we have here. We have an antivirus, a stop button, a password vault, print feature, save page, preferences,
tab
the tabs function, security process, or security process. Yes, we do have security process. Main window, bookmarks and homepage. What is this? Favorites, back and forward buttons, browser history and cache, and the address bar. This is what we're going to try to do next. I want everybody to kind of take a careful and a critical look at all the components and other elements of the browser architecture or functionality that we've identified, and see if there are any kind of elements that maybe need to go together. They just belong together. Maybe one is a part of the other. Maybe they're overlapping in some way. And see if you could identify any such things. So does anybody see any candidates for perhaps merging or grouping? Anything?
I would say the tab function in the main window. Because each time you create a new tab, for example, you're creating another main window.
The security process in the antivirus.
An antivirus and the security process would go together because logically, they serve a very similar, if not the same purpose. Correct? Okay, let's group them in a similar fashion. Is there anything else? Any other combinations, groupings?
Favorites and bookmarks are very similar.
Yeah.
Probably merged in one feature.
Okay, let's do it then. And let's just try to clarify. Are they really the same feature?
Well, the favorites is, I think, another name for bookmarking page.
So if that's the case, then they are actually one and the same.
Yeah.
Right.
So perhaps we could somehow merge those two models together. Could we?
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And let's put one sticky note on top of the other. So what we've accomplished, we've merged two models representing very similar, if not identical, concepts of bookmarks and favorites. Let's try to move all of our models, the models of the components that belong to the web browser, inside of the system boundary represented by these two base plates. And any of the components that you feel may not really belong inside of the browser, well, we'll just keep them outside. Also, while we're doing this, let's try to group closer those components that logically work together or depend upon each other as we identified them earlier. So, what do you guys think? What should go where?
I believe password vault and security process should be pretty close to each other.
I think all the buttons could maybe go in a cluster, like the back and forward, the stop.
Even the new tabs.
Maybe
Print.
print.
Yeah.
So that would be.
Right. Can we also maybe add it with the main window? Because like all these buttons are honestly in the main window, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the main
Well-
window be behind them, they're all in front of it.
Or is the main window just the web page? You know what I mean?
I'm putting the stop button near the back and forward button because they're similar in terms of handling the current page that you're on.
Okay.
You could also put print there as well, handling with the current page that it's viewing.
And
Save
even
page?
save page here with the current page you're viewing.
I think we should put the cache close to the back and forward button, because if you want to if you want to go back to a page you've already accessed, generally it's going to go queue the cache to request that file that website you'd already been to. So I think in that sense they're similar.
Okay. What other things do we have here?
We have antivirus, address bar, the favorites,
Oh, yeah.
bookmark.
We have the tabs in the main window, which we already
Well-
stated need to go together.
Remember, we decided that the antivirus should go together or somehow related to the security process,
Mhm.
right?
So I think the antivirus doesn't actually belong within the system boundary of the browser because it could be a third-party application or something to be a software program that's independent of the browser itself.
Or a part of the operating system, but not a part of the browser. Okay, so we're just going to leave it outside there. What else do we have remaining?
The main window, and I would like to make the case that print and save page are two operations that are done on a page that you currently have loaded. I don't think that they would be affected by the cache. I think that they would be affected by the main window instead.
I think this is a very good point. There are two things remaining. We have, what do we have here? We have
Bookmarks.
bookmarks and favorites,
We also have preferences.
and also an address bar. So, where do these things go?
I think the bookmarks would go with the cache, because the cache is referencing pages that you've visited in the past or something that's loading.
Okay,
So
maybe we should put it underneath the cache.
I think we'd also go with main window though, because you're bookmarking the page you're on right now in that main window.
Not
Well,
necessarily.
Usually.
I think you can have
Visually
different
they are.
bookmarks that are still stored in the system, but you're not actually accessing or displaying them in the main window.
Yeah, you can still have them there, but in order to use that function and bookmark something, you have to.
Hmm?
The address bar, I think, can go near the main window
Yeah.
because it has a very high correlation there.
I might suggest that it actually is a part, if not a physical part of the main window, but it's very closely tied to it, because it is supposed to display the address of the page which is currently displayed in that window.
Yeah.
So it's not really a part of it, but logically very closely related to it. Now that we have a big model of our browser, let's try to identify all possible meaningful connections between different components. We have all these different connectors here. So let's try to connect any pairs of components, any pairs of modules that you think have a meaningful connection. Maybe one depends upon the other. Maybe one works closely together with another. Maybe one depends on the data provided by another. So anything that would make sense, try to make such a connection. So let's try to do one connection at a time. One person would think about one connection and make it. Everybody will take 1 minute to do that, and then everybody will explain why they made such a connection. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Those shortest connections.
So everybody had a chance to make one connection. I very much would like to hear the rationale. Why did every one of you make a connection that you made? Would you like to explain?
Okay, so my connection that I created was between the security process and the main window. So this connection right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made that connection because the security process runs on whichever website that you're on currently. So the main window acts as like the website that you're on, and so the main process runs off of the main window, I believe. So that's why I made that connection.
Okay. Does it make sense to everyone?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's move on.
So usually your address bar is going to display the address of the page that's being displayed in the main window.
I made a connection between the main window and the browsing history because the browsing history is automatically populated with pages that are visited in the main window. When you click on a new link, it saves the page that was in the main window to the browser history.
I made a connection between the back and forward buttons and the main window because they're located in the main window and they operate whether or not the window goes back and forward.
So I chose the stop button to go with the main window because the stop button stops the process happening on the main window.
Mm-hmm.
I made a connection between tab function and main window because every time you open a new tab, they open a new main window.
Okay, makes very good sense. Now, would you say that we've captured all the most important logical connections in the architecture, the way how we envisioned it so far? Do you think there is anything really important that's missing? If you think there are such things, we may do another round of making these connections. But at the same time, we don't want to make any connections just for the sake of making them, because it will make this architecture overly complex. What are the connections that we just made?
We made the connection for main window to the print and also main window to save page because it's dealing with the current page displayed on the window.
Mm-hmm. And what's the other thing?
I made the connection between the bookmarks and the browser cache because they'll have to be stored in the browser.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Are there any other things that you would say, yes, we gotta have that. We gotta have those connections. So let's try to revisit this architecture. Would you say that maybe there are some elements within the architecture that we built that would correspond to one of the 4 standard architectural patterns?
I believe that there is an element for perhaps the repository architecture model for the cache. The cache itself would act as the repository for the other components that it's currently linked to, like we have the back and forward buttons is linked to the cache. We also have the favorites, bookmarks, linking to the cache as well, and also the main window, and in transit, the tabs, or the, what was it? The tabs are also linked to the main window, which is linked to the cache.
And don't forget the address bar.
And the address bar
Mhm.
also is indirectly linking to the cache from the main window. So those are all the components that are using the cache as its repository.
As the central data
Yes.
store for everything, except possibly for the settings.
Yes.
But everything else, all the other data, is stored somewhere within the cache. Okay, I think that's a very good point. Anything else?
So at the top, we have the function that's closest to the user. That would be the main window. Everything else would be derived from information obtained through the main window. For instance, the browser history is a storing pages that the main window visits. So that would be at the only item at the top layer. At the secondary layer, we'd have everything that the main window directly interacts with that doesn't affect the browser cache, such as tabs, the address bar, saving the page, printing a page, etc. Because saving the page affects a file system, not the cache. On the secondary layer, we'd also have the browser history in the cache. On the tertiary layer, we have everything that is directly intertwined with the browser history and cache, such as the bookmarks, back and forth pages, etc.
Okay, I think that's another good perspective. All right, I'm sure with some other ideas, if you thought about some other elements for this architecture, we probably could find examples for pretty much all the 4 architectural patterns in here. But as you pointed out, this happens to be a good example for the repository architecture and for the layer architecture. Well, thank you very much.